one thing out of the way. For all the naysayers out there who love to drop dumb comments because they don't know any better, this one's for you. Just recently, Chris made a documentary video on yours truly, and he had digital Robert Plant narrating it. Yeah, that Robert Plant. But for those of you who still don't get it, let me break it down nice and easy. Chris Dallas put that story together and used the real Robert Plant, cut out straight from an old interview decades ago. Not AI, real footage, lip-synced to him and used a visual to narrate my story. And his voice, that wasn't fake either. Chris cloned Robert's voice to 98.6% accuracy. That's damn near perfect. So, yeah, it was digital Robert Plant and his voice telling my life story. And same goes with the photos he used for me. Yes, some of them were AI generated, but many were real. He got real photos of me and used them in that video. So to the clowns that said, it's not even close being me, well, you know squat about me then. You're not a true fan. And now we're flipping the script. I'm narrating the story of Robert Plant and Led Zeppelin. So for those of you already warming up your keyboards to say, this ain't Steve Perry, or this ain't Robert Plant, sit your asses down. Chris is using a wide variety, and I mean a plethora of real images of Robert in this video. And yeah, a few are going to be AI generated, but that's because that's what this channel does. And the videos you'll be watching of me, all but one is AI generated. The rest are cut out from interviews I did in the past, even decades ago. As for the voice you're hearing now, Chris matched it to 99.4% of my natural speaking voice. Not my singing voice, my talking voice. So if you think I sound a little different than I did in 1981, guess what? We all age. Bottom line, what you're watching is crafted with care, built on truth and driven by passion. This isn't some random AI experiment. This is storytelling done the right way, and it's 100% true. Chris took 3 months to research everything you're about to hear and put together, so everything is spot on to a T. Don't believe us? Go ask the real Robert Plant. I bet he sides with us. Okay, enough with that. Now let's get into the true life story of Robert Plant and the legend that is Led Zeppelin. You ever hear a voice that feels like thunder and soul rolled into one? That's Robert Plant. And before the dragon roared, before the golden god walked barefoot across stages, soaked in feedback and sweat, he was just a skinny kid from West Bromwich, England, chasing sound like it was salvation. Before the roaring crowds, before the golden curls bounced across stadium stages, before Stairway to Heaven echoed through the halls of rock and roll history, there was just Robert Anthony Plant. Born August 20th, 1948 in West Bromwich, Staffordshire, England, a post-war town still stitched together by factories, fog, and formality. His father, Robert C. Plant, had served as a civil engineer in the Royal Air Force, and his mother, Annie, was of Romanachal descent. She kept the home steady, while Robert's imagination started doing laps before he could tie his shoes. Now, I never met Plant personally, but I feel like I know the guy because every note he ever sang had roots in rebellion, roots in something restless. He wasn't born into music royalty. He wasn't handed a guitar at age 3 or trained by some elite academy. What he did have was a fascination with sound. As a kid, while other boys played with toy soldiers or kicked around footballs, Robert was sitting next to a radio, falling in love with the raw ache of the American South. Delta blues, Chicago grit, Robert Johnson, Skip James, Muddy Waters, Howlin' Wolf. That's where it began, not on the streets of London, but in the back corners of record shops and crackling AM radio stations, where voices wept over heartbreak and hard times. Voices that didn't sing the blues, they bled it. And young Robert, he was hooked. He'd practice vocal runs in the mirror, imitating those soul-worn voices. He didn't want to sound British. He wanted to sound ancient, timeless. The funny thing is, his voice didn't match the look. You had this skinny, awkward kid with a soft face and wild eyes, and then out came this wail, this tear electric cry that felt like it had traveled from another continent. He started singing in local bands by his teens, Crawling King Snakes, Listen, and Band of Joy. That last one, it's where he met John Bonham, more on Bonzo later, but let's just say when you mix Plant's scream with Bonham's hammer, you don't get music, you get a storm. Robert's early days weren't glamour and green rooms. He hitchhiked. He slept on floors. He worked odd jobs, loading bricks, shoveling asphalt, anything to pay the bills, while chasing this thing he couldn't quite explain. His parents didn't get it. They wanted him to be an accountant or civil servant, something respectable. But Robert, he wasn't made for desks or forms. He was made to howl. And when he opened his mouth, that voice didn't just sing, it declared something untrained, something wild. It wasn't pitch perfect like opera or choir. It was feral, and it was his. Now, I know a thing or two about being misunderstood. When I was coming up, people thought my voice was too high, too weird, too different. They wanted me to dial it back, make it smoother, simpler, more commercial. But music isn't about fitting in, it's about breaking out. And Robert, he wasn't just breaking out. He was breaking through. He didn't know it then, but fate was already setting the stage. Somewhere out there, a man named Jimmy Page was tuning his guitar, looking for a voice that could match the fire in his riffs. And across England, a skinny, blues-obsessed kid named Robert Plant was getting ready to walk into destiny. Before there was Zeppelin, before the legends and the madness, there was just a boy with a dream, a radio, and a voice too big for the world to ignore. And that's where the story really begins. Let me tell you something. When the right two people collide in music, it's not a handshake. It's a spark that sets the world on fire. That spark, it happened in 1968 when a guitar genius named Jimmy Page crossed paths with a wild-hammed, wide-throated singer from the Midlands named Robert Plant. Page was no rookie. He had already earned his stripes in the Yardbirds, one of the most influential bands of the British invasion. But by the time the Yardbirds fell apart, Jimmy wasn't interested in playing it safe. He wanted to build something massive, something new. A band that fused blues folk, hard rock, mysticism, and pure, unfiltered power. So he went looking for a voice that could match the chaos in his mind. Not just any voice, the right voice. He auditioned a handful of singers. None of them stuck. None of them had that thing, that edge, that mystic danger. Until someone handed him a tip. You should hear this kid from the Black Country, Robert Plant. Bit of a madman. Jimmy was curious. He went to see him sing, and the second Plant opened his mouth. That was it. I mean, you could practically hear the gears in Page's head lock into place. That wasn't just a singer. That was a weapon, a spell. Robert didn't just sing the blues. He shouted it, whispered it, moaned it like some half-wild prophet, channeling lightning straight from the sky. Now, I've stood behind the mic in front of thousands. I've poured my soul into songs that reached the heart of people I've never met. But Plant, his voice wasn't just singing. It was summoning something ancient, something spiritual, something dangerous. And Jimmy saw it right away. He asked Robert to come to London and record some demos, just to test the waters. Robert said yes, but only if he could bring his drummer. Not just any drummer, a beast of a man with sledgehammer hands and a groove so tight it made time itself lean forward. His name, John Bonham, but most would come to know him as Bonzo. This right here, this is when the gods started tuning their instruments. With John Paul Jones already signed on, a seasoned, sharp multi-instrumentalist with a deep understanding of arrangement and rhythm, the pieces were now in place. It was four men, four forces, each one powerful alone, but together they were volatile, explosive, perfectly unbalanced. And that was the secret. They didn't walk into a studio to play it safe. They walked in to detonate. And what came out of those first sessions wasn't just a band. It was a storm front, a sound so massive, so unapologetically alive, it didn't sound like anything else on earth. It was blues without boundaries, rock without rules, It was pagan, primal, and poetic all at once. You know, the first time they played together, it was like something clicked in the universe. Jimmy once said it was instant chemistry. But I don't think it was chemistry, I think it was destiny. They didn't talk much. They didn't need to. The music spoke. And when Robert let out that howl, when Bonham slammed into a beat, when Page's guitar bent through space and Jones anchored it all down, you knew. You were watching something the world had never heard before and never would again. They had no label, no contract, just a sound. And that was enough because they were about to become Led Zeppelin. Ever hear something for the first time and know instantly that it changed everything? That's what happened in late 1968 when four guys walked into Olympic Studios in London. No label, no fanfare, no idea how big it was going to get, and laid down the foundation for the most seismic debut album in rock history, Led Zeppelin. The first record, but let's back it up a second, because this wasn't just a band figuring it out. This was four monsters locked in sync from day one. Jimmy Page produced the whole thing himself. They cut most of the album in just over 30 hours. That's not a typo. No months-long sessions, no endless retakes. Just raw power, deep instinct, and lightning in a bottle energy. They put the needle down on side A, and what do you hear? Good times, bad times. Bonham's kick pedal triplets, Plant's opening shriek. Right there, you know. This isn't the Beatles, it ain't the Stones. It's something darker, heavier, louder. And then you hit, Babe, I'm gonna leave you. And suddenly, it's not just fire, it's shadow, acoustic, haunting, with Plant sounding like a man confessing and exploding all at once. Track after track, they were redefining what a rock album could be. And then came Dazed and Confused. I remember the first time I heard it, I was frozen. That descending bass line, Page's violin bow on the guitar, Plant wailing like a spirit, breaking through dimensions. It was primal, eerie, hypnotic, like something out of a dream or a nightmare. Now look, in 1969, nobody knew what the hell hard rock was supposed to sound like. People were still grooving to Motown, British Invasion pop, and psychedelic jams. And then here comes Zeppelin with Bonham's thunder, Page's riffs, Jones's low-end wizardry, and Plant, man, Plant was possessed. He wasn't trying to be Elvis. He wasn't copying Jagger. He was summoning something older, something wild. When that debut album dropped in January of '69, it hit like an asteroid. Critics, they didn't get it. Rolling Stone called it weak, unimaginative, unnecessary. Yeah. The same magazine that would later call it one of the greatest albums of all time. But the fans, oh, the fans knew. That first US tour, they were opening for acts like Vanilla Fudge and Iron Butterfly, but every night, Zeppelin stole the show. Blistering 30-minute versions of How Many More Times, Plant ripping his vocal cords in front of people who'd never heard a voice hit that high, that raw, that hungry. They were supposed to be openers. They walked off stage as legends. By the time '69 ended, they weren't the opening act anymore. They were the main event. You don't get that kind of rise anymore. No hype machine, no social media, just music and word of mouth. Pure impact. That debut record would go on to sell over 10 million copies. It redrew the map. And the craziest part, they were just getting started. Behind the scenes, Robert Plant was changing too. He wasn't just the kid from West Brom anymore. He was evolving, finding his identity, grown into the stage god the world would come to know. That swagger, that shirtless confidence, that wild mane flying behind the mic like he was some kind of golden wolf under stage lights. That didn't happen overnight, but it started here on that first record, that first tour, those first screams that made every soul in the room stop cold and ask, who the hell is that? By the dawn of the 1970s, Led Zeppelin didn't just climb the mountain, they became the mountain. They weren't a band anymore, they were a myth in real time, larger than life, louder than thunder, and at the center of it all, Robert Plant, the golden god himself. He didn't walk on stage, he glided. Shirt wide open, curls drenched in sweat and spotlight, mic stand twirling like a weapon in a sword fight. He wasn't just singing songs anymore, he was casting spells. Audiences didn't just listen, they surrendered. People screamed, fainted, wept, because they'd never seen anything like him. And honestly, neither had we. Back then, I was still years away from hitting the stage with Journey, but I was watching, and I was listening. And like every aspiring frontman on the planet, I was thinking one thing: how do you follow that? From 1970 to 1975, Zeppelin dropped a series of albums that didn't just raise the bar, they melted it down and recast it in molten gold. Led Zeppelin II, dirty, heavy, blues-soaked brilliance. Whole Lotta Love, that wasn't a song, that was sex on vinyl. Led Zeppelin III, they slowed it down, got acoustic, got mystical. Immigrant Song still came in swinging though, Viking war cry and all. Led Zeppelin IV, yeah, that one. Black Dog, rock and roll, and of course, Stairway to Heaven. Let me pause right there, because Stairway isn't just a track. It's a cathedral. It's an 8-minute journey through shadow, soul, and salvation. And Robert's voice? It floats, it aches, it erupts. To this day, no song has been argued over more, and no vocal has been imitated more, but never equaled. You ever notice something? When people talk about Zeppelin, they always mention the music, but what really shook the world was their presence, because these guys weren't playing concerts. They were leading rituals. Bonham on drums, a thunder god in human form. Jones holding it all down, cool and composed. Page in his velvet jackets, bowed guitar and black magic riffs. And Plant? He was the face, the flame, the fire. He danced, he moaned, he screamed. Sometimes he stood completely still, and that was louder than the amps. Now here's the other side of it. The fame came fast, too fast. Hotels were destroyed, groupies lined the halls, limousines, private jets, the fabled starship plane. They lived like emperors of a world that didn't have rules. And I don't say that with judgment, because when you're that young, that famous, that powerful, there's no manual. No one tells you how to handle worship. Robert Plant could walk into a city he'd never seen before, and by the time he hit the stage, 10,000 people were chanting his name. He once said, "I'm a golden god." And you know what? For a while, he was. But fame, it takes its toll. Robert started feeling the weight of it, the expectations, the chaos, the burnout. He loved the stage, yeah, but somewhere in those hotel rooms and endless cities, he started asking himself the question all legends eventually face. Is this who I am, or just who I've become? And look, I know that feeling. When the crowd roars your name, it's the greatest high you'll ever know. But when the stage lights go dark, you're still just you. For Robert, that identity crisis was starting to flicker in the shadows, even as the band reached its absolute peak. They were on top of the world, but storms were coming, and the road ahead was about to get steep. Every legend has a breaking point. For a while, it looked like Led Zeppelin were untouchable. Albums going platinum before they even hit shelves. Sold out arenas across continents. Private jets. Castles. Custom everything. But what they didn't know, or maybe didn't want to know, was that the fire burning that bright was burning from both ends. By 1975, the cracks were forming. It started with the thing that brings any man to his knees: family. Robert Plant was in the middle of a Zeppelin tour when tragedy hit home. His wife, Maureen, and their children were in a horrific car crash while vacationing in Greece. Maureen was critically injured. His son barely survived. Plant dropped everything. He flew out, stayed by their side, and for a while, Zeppelin was on hold. I've seen that look in people's eyes when music no longer matters, when the only thing you want is for the people you love to live. He eventually returned. But something in him was different now. The fire was still there, but it was flickering. He wrote more reflectively. He moved a little slower. You could hear it in Presence, 1976, that tension between strength and weariness. And if that wasn't enough, the real hammer came just a year later, 1977, in the middle of an American tour. Plant got the call. His son, Karad, just 5 years old, had died suddenly from a stomach virus. Just like that, gone. Let me tell you something. I don't care how many records you've sold or how loud the crowd screams. That kind of pain goes deeper than music. Robert was shattered. He wanted to quit everything. The band, the fame, the world. He retreated into silence, into grief. He later said that Zeppelin, continuing after Karak's death, felt mechanical. He wasn't creating anymore, he was surviving. And while Plant was grieving, the rest of the band wasn't doing much better. Bonham's drinking was spiraling out of control. Page was knee-deep in heroin and mysticism. Jones was quiet, but even he was getting worn down by the machine. The tours got darker, the music heavier, the tension thicker than smoke backstage. They recorded In Through the Outdoor in 1979, and to some fans it felt distant. Plant's voice was still powerful, but more introspective. Less God, more man. More wounds, fewer wails. Then came the final blow. September 25, 1980. John Bonham, the heart and hammer of Led Zeppelin, was found dead after a night of heavy drinking. He had choked in his sleep. Gone at just 32 years old. And just like that, the beast was broken. No press release, no reunion talk, no "we'll carry on" in his memory. Zeppelin was over. The surviving members released a short statement. We wish it to be known that the loss of our dear friend and the deep sense of undivided harmony felt by ourselves and our manager have led us to decide that we could not continue as we were. That was it. No encore. No farewell tour. Just silence. And honestly, that's the most Zeppelin thing they ever did. I respected the hell out of that. Because some things are bigger than business, bigger than legacy. Sometimes it's just over. Plant never tried to replace Bonzo. He mourned him quietly. And when he finally did return to music, it was as a different man, older, wiser, still powerful, but no longer the golden god, just Robert. And that's not a fall, that's an evolution. When the thunder faded, when the lights went out, and when the last echo of Bonzo's drums finally settled into silence, Robert Plant stood alone. No more Led Zeppelin, no more stadium roars, no more brotherhood forged in fire. Just a man with a past that shook the world and a future he hadn't yet figured out. I know what that feels like in my own way. When you've been part of something that big, stepping away doesn't feel like a choice. It feels like being unplugged from the universe. Robert wasn't just mourning a band, he was mourning his identity. He'd spent over a decade becoming the face of one of the greatest rock bands of all time. Now he had to become someone else. And that's not easy when the world refuses to see you any other way. In 1982, Plant finally made his return with his first solo album, Pictures at 11. And man, it was different. Gone were the dragons, mysticism, and screaming guitar battles. In their place, more nuance, more experimentation, a little pop, a little blues, a little Robert rediscovering himself. Some fans didn't get it, but Chris Dallas did. He loved every minute of it. He was there at his first concert. The fans, though, they wanted Whole Lotta Love 2.0. But Plant wasn't here to repeat the past. He was chasing new sounds, new people, new truths. The voice was still there, older, wiser, still powerful, but now he let it breathe. He let it explore. He wasn't just singing at the world anymore. He was talking to it. And yeah, it didn't sell like Zeppelin, but that wasn't the point. He was healing through sound. Throughout the 80s, Robert released a string of solo albums. The Principle of Moments, 1983, with Big Log, a smooth, hypnotic groove that showed he didn't need to scream to move you. Shaken and Stirred, 1985. More experimental, diving into synths and weird textures. Trying to stay ahead of the times instead of chasing the past. Even flirted with the Zeppelin sound in the Honey Drippers, a side project with Jimmy Page that leaned heavy on 50s rock and soul. Sea of Love became a hit, but it was short-lived. Because Robert, he was still running, still searching, trying to define who he was without the crown. Now here's what I respect most about Robert. Even though Zeppelin was gone, his bond with Jimmy Page never really died. They were brothers in music, in history, in grief. In 1994, the world got a surprise. Page and Plant reunited, not for a cash grab tour, not for a greatest hits parade, but for something bold. No Quarter, Jimmy Page and Robert Plant, unleaded. An MTV special and world tour featuring orchestras, Moroccan rhythms, reimagined Zeppelin classics, and new music. And let me tell you, hearing Kashmir with full strings and Egyptian instrumentation, goosebumps. Because that's what artists do. They don't just play the past, they transform it. Plant and Page stood together again, not as young gods, but as survivors, as men who knew what they had lost and what they still carried. Robert Plant could have spent the rest of his life coasting on Zeppelin's shadow. He could have toured the world singing Black Dog and Ramble On to stadiums full of nostalgia. But he didn't. He kept moving, kept changing. His later albums, like Mighty Rearranger and the Grammy-winning Raising Sand with Alison Krauss, show a man still evolving, still curious, still hungry for new sounds. And that's rare. Because most legends, they stop, they fossilize, they get stuck in the decade that made them famous. But Robert Plant, he walked out of the 70s through the 80s, across the 90s, and into the 2000s with his soul intact. I never got to sing with him, but if I ever do, I'll thank him, not just for the voice, not just for Zeppelin, but for never stopping, for showing all of us that the second act can be just as meaningful as the first. He wasn't just the golden god, he became something better. A man still in love with the mystery of music. Every generation has its sound, its anthem, its voice. And for an entire era of rock, that voice was Robert Plant. He wasn't the first to scream, but he was the first to make it feel divine. His high register became the standard, his phrasing, his swagger, that effortless blend of bluesman and mystic. You can hear it in every singer that followed, from hair metal gods to grunge icons, to arena rock vocalists like me. Plant didn't just influence us, he gave us permission to be bold, to be strange, to stretch the limits of what a rock voice could feel like. I'll tell you straight, if Robert Plant hadn't existed, there might have never been a Steve Perry, and I'm not the only one. You hear him in Axl Rose's banshee wails, in Chris Cornell's haunting howls, and every frontman who ever stood center stage and believed they could command the world with just a mic. But here's what separates Plant from the imitators. He wasn't copying anyone. He wasn't trying to be cool, he just was. He let the music move through him. And that's rare, man. That's lightning in a bottle, rare. Led Zeppelin was inducted into the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame in 1995. You'd think that was the final stamp, the victory lap. But legacy doesn't live in awards. It lives in what you leave behind, the voices you awaken, the fire you pass on. Robert Plant didn't just front a band. He fronted a movement, a rebellion wrapped in leather, dripping with sweat and soul. And he did it without selling out, without softening, without chasing trends. He remained curious, he remained humble, he remained true. I've had the honor of hearing a lot of voices, but Robert's, that voice still haunts the bones of every venue Zeppelin ever played. It's still in the walls, still in the air. When he sang, "There's a Lady Who's Sure," he wasn't just telling a story, he was opening a portal. And we all stepped through it. So what do you say about a man like that? You don't label him. You don't cage him in decade or genre. You just stand back and say, thank you. Thank you for the notes no one else could reach. Thank you for the words that pierce through the noise. Thank you for showing us what it means to feel every single syllable. because Robert Plant wasn't just a singer, he was a force of nature. And long after the amps go silent, his voice will still be echoing somewhere in the distance. And this incredible story, 3 months in the making. It was written and produced by Chris Dallas, a true storyteller, a lover of legends, someone who gets it, who knows the soul behind the music. He asked me, your digital Steve Perry, to bring this story to life, not only because Led Zeppelin is Chris's favorite band of all time, but also for you, for the faithful, the fans, the ones who never stop believing in the voices that shaped us. So from Chris and from me, thank you for listening. The story lives on, forever golden, forever wild, forever Zeppelin. And that is the story of Robert Plant, told by a fan, told by a brother in the art, told with love. So if you love stories like this, do me a favor, hit that subscribe button, like, comment, and share it with someone who still believes in real music. Because Chris Dallas has more legends coming. You won't want to miss them. Digital Steve Perry out.